So today we're going to be talking about what a shim is and why you might want to use one if you're using a ball bearing system in your next robotics project. So, shims. Why would we want to use one of these little guys in a project? The reason we'd use one of these is that it reduces friction throughout your system. And most shims are going to be used when you're going to attach them to a ball bearing. A ball bearing has two races. You've got an outer race, or an outer surface, and an inner race, or inner surface. And if you were to take a hub, mount it up against this bearing, and then rotate the hub around, what's going to happen is you're actually going to be contacting both races at the same time. And then rather than spinning along the smoothness of the ball bearing, you're actually just literally rubbing on two pieces of metal that are moving at the same time. So a shim, if I were to add this in between, what a shim does is it gives us just enough space between our object and our ball bearing that when I rotate the ball bearing, now the races can rotate independently from one another. And we can actually use the balls inside the bearing for their intended purpose. So let's talk about where you might use one of these. A really common scenario you might find is you've got a motor attached to a gear, and then you have another system attached above so that you have some sort of geared output. Let's say you wanted to rotate an arm or something like this at a gear ratio. These are here, these two hubs are where you'd want to actually be attaching your shim. So let's go ahead and remove this out of the system for now. And let's do this run without a shim first. So if I were to add my ball bearing with the flange side out to my system, put in my shaft, put on my hub, and then do one more ball bearing with the flange on the outside, and then put my bearing on like so, you're gonna hear, let me see if I can get that close to my microphone here. You can hear that. You've actually got metal rubbing on metal. So this would be the perfect time to be using a shim. So let's take the system apart. And now anywhere where you're gonna have something moving, contact and ball bearing, you need to add a shim. So in this case, I'm gonna have two. I'm gonna add one shim to this system here. Come on. We'll add in our, like so. We'll add in another ball bearing. And again, on this side, I'm gonna add another shim. Let's go ahead and clamp these down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and pinch these together as I clamp this sonic hub on. We'll pop this one on as well. And now I've got a nice freely rotating system. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit so we can see here. So you can notice that as I am looking right at that system, I've got the outer race of my ball bearing, small gap, and then my actual sonic hub as well. So as I rotate this, you can no longer hear that metal on metal scraping noise. So using a shim, anytime you've got something rotating against a ball bearing and it's going to be touching in contact, you should be using a shim to reduce that friction inside of your system. I hope that'll help you with the project, and best of luck with building your robot.